Hello and welcome back to the next video in our series where we're talking about how you can actually connect our iconpractice software to Zapier, which is a tool which allows you to connect to all sorts of different programs that you can use for things like email management and other sort of tools that will allow you to grow your practice more easily, more efficiently, etc. So the information that we're going to talk about here is going to be specific to iconpractice, but as we get further into this series, we're going to talk about how to use Zapier to connect to all sorts of different tools, and we're going to go into the specifics of some of those individual tools. So make sure you subscribe to this series, subscribe to our channel, and turn the notifications on so that when we release our next video in the series, you'll be notified. So first of all, Zapier itself, I talked about this in our last video. We talked about how to actually connect iconpractice together with the Zapier software. I'll link to that within the show notes, and also I'll put a link up above. If you haven't already watched that, I would recommend you do that before you go into this next step, because otherwise you're not going to have a connection to work with. But once you've done that, be sure to come back and run through the rest of this video. So Zapier is like I say, a tool which allows you to connect to a number of different programs like email management systems and so forth. Now, with respect to iconpractice, what you're going to do is, first of all, you will log into your Zapier dashboard here like this, or your Zapier interface. And what you're going to do, first of all, is you're going to click on Zap here, which will allow you to create one of these workflows within Zapier. Now, this is a Zap here which I've already started to connect here just to streamline this video a little bit. And what you're going to do, first of all, is you're going to connect it up to iconpractice. And I may well actually just quickly show you how to do that. So you're going to click on Zap. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find iconpractice within the Zapier database. So we'll type on iconpractice. It'll be there. Just click on that, and you can see now that it has placed iconpractice as the initial step within this Zapier workflow. Now I'll go back to this one that I've set up here. Now within Zapier you have things which are called triggers, and these are the things that will actually start the workflow happening. Now within iconpractice we offer a range of different triggers. If you click on this sidebar here, you can see that there's I have here selected the on adding a patient tag trigger, but there are a number of different triggers that you can use. If somebody books an appointment, if they cancel an appointment, creating new patients, marking patients did not arrive, updating patients, removing patient tags, etc. And so these different tags will allow you to trigger these workflows according to different actions within iconpractice. Now, personally, I quite like the on adding a tag to a patient one. Or you could also use the removing a patient tag to allow you to trigger an action. And I'll show you how to add a tag in a second. But if you, say, have automated follow-up sequences within, say, email management programs or something like that, you may decide to actually do this trigger on cancelling an appointment, for example. So if somebody cancels an appointment, you automatically put the person into a flow that will follow up with somebody using a sequence of emails, etc. And then what you could do is that you could actually set up another trigger within a different Zap that will, whenever somebody books an appointment, it takes them off any cancellation follow-up that is set up. And that we may well do a follow-up video on that in sort of coming weeks if you'd like to know more about how to do things like that, for example. Okay, so let's just say we're selecting this tag here this action here, which is going to be triggered upon adding a tag to a patient. Now, for example, if you were in the iconpractice interface and you had a patient booked in and you wanted to add a tag to them, say they were coming in for their report of findings visit today, and you wanted to send a follow-up email to them after having completed their report of findings, what you could do is you could click upon the appointment. You can then click the tags button here, and then you could go ahead and you could add a tag to a patient. Now, I've already got back pain here, but let's say we added concussion, for example, and this was a concussion patient. And it's that simple. Now I've added a tag. What I can then do is I can then go into Zapier here, and what it's going to do is it's basically will prompt you to do a test. I've already done it for the sake of speed here, and you can see that what it's done is that when I added the back pain tag prior to starting this video, it has pulled through all of these details related to me into Zapier. So what I can then do is I can then actually go ahead and set something up in order to pipe me, for example, into another software program. Now, if you were trying to create something like a specific set of emails that you wanted to send to somebody who had back pain as opposed to somebody that had neck pain, for example, or sciatica or shoulder pain or whatever, what you can do is you can actually filter these things using some of the options built into Zapier. And so what we could do here is we could select filter, and then we could choose the tag field here. So we can select tag like so, and then we say text exactly matches, and then for example with this one we would say back pain. Okay, and then we would click continue. And now what will happen is that if a patient gets pulled through and they have a shoulder pain tag, then they won't go any further because the tag that they have that is attached to them is a shoulder pain tag and not a back pain tag. But if they came through with a back pain tag, then they would continue on to the next step within this workflow. And so that is how we would potentially filter some of these actions if I only wanted to do certain types of activities. Another thing that you could potentially do is you may, if you have multiple practices within your iconpractice instance, you may have specific versions of different workflows for different practices. And so what we can see here is we've got default practice ID, and you can find the default practice ID within the practices section within iconpractice. It will tell you what the ID number is for the practice. And then we can go ahead and we can say for this instance that default practice ID equals 1, and therefore that only means that anyone who comes through with the practice ID relating to the practice that I want to run this for, then they will continue, whereas if I had somebody that had come through from another practice, then they will get filtered out and they won't actually go ahead and get sent through. Okay, so those are some of the ways that you can use filter options within Zapier. Now, what we could then do is we can go ahead and we can connect this up to another tool here. So for example, I have Mailchimp set up. So you can see that I've now selected Mailchimp. Now we have Mailchimp built into iconpractice. So most of the time you're not really going to need to use Zapier for Mailchimp. But if, for example, you wanted to go ahead and you wanted to add a specific tag within Mailchimp, which would then trigger a certain automation, then you can do that. Whereas within our direct integration, we don't have that option. It's all or nothing for all the patients going across. So what we could do is we could add or update a subscriber. And so we could go ahead and we could select an account. So I've selected my account there. And now I'm going to continue. So I'm going to just choose a thing there. I'm going to select the patient's email address, and so what I can do is I can pull through the information that was sent through from iconpractice earlier. So I can put the subscriber email in there. I can choose things like first name, for example, so I can map that using the information from iconpractice, etc. And then we can go ahead and we can then continue, and you can see that what will happen is it will now go ahead, and I won't do the test here, but if I was to do a test, it would go ahead and it would subscribe me to the list that I have selected within Mailchimp. And so that is how you can do that. And as I say, we're going to cover a whole lot more of these in future as we work through this video series, etc. So one last thing I'd like to talk about before we actually go ahead and wind this video up is that within Zapier, we have quite a number of pre-built integrations that you can use. So I'll put a link to this particular page in Zapier, but basically you can go to this page and you can basically set these up. So we've, for example, got import new icon practice patients to active campaign, for example, or tag Mailchimp subscribers, basically using tags from icon practice. So what I can do is I can just go ahead here and I can click try it, and what should happen, fingers crossed, and what has happened here is that you can see that it has gone ahead and it has pre-built this particular workflow out within Zapier here. Now, I still need to do a little bit of customization in that I need to select my connection to icon practice, and I may well actually want to do the filtering that I was talking about before, such that you know, only people with the back pain tag, for example, go ahead and continue through. But as you can see, it's kind of doing its thing here. It's going ahead and it's creating the different sort of default options, and then it's going to ask me to go ahead and you know, work out you know, or confirm that what it has set up is the correct thing. And you can see here that the AI features within Zapier are going ahead and doing most of the work for us, and we can just go back and customize it later. So that's how you would actually go ahead connecting icon practice to Zapier, and then going ahead and connecting that to a further tool downstream from Zapier. If you have any questions, be sure to pop those in the comments below. Be sure to like the video if possible. That's really helpful from our point of view, from the algorithm. And be sure to subscribe as well so that you get new updates and so on. But thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again.